So when I first started wood turning, it was solely to make plugs for stretched ears. And I actually started, here's a sample. I actually started making those on a drill press, believe it or not. This is the second lathe that I purchased from Penn State Industries there. And it's held up real great over the years. So I recommend, if you're getting into wood turning, start with a PSI lathe, especially if you're in the Philly area. They are local. They're in Northeast Philly or Andalusia, I believe. I use a bowl gouge, a small parting tool, and I have a larger parting. The type of cut that I use can only be achieved on the bowl gouge, and it's by flipping it upside down at about almost 90 degrees so that the cup is almost 90. It's like an 80 or 85, and it's called a shear scraping cut. And in doing that cut with the end grain and the side grain alternating on the jewelry that I make, the shear scraping cut reduces the amount of tear out, therefore reduces the sanding. And most people, when they're getting into making plugs, they do a spindle turn blank. Now, spindle is side grain all the way around, and your end grain is here. So you can use a spindle gouge and get good results. So the grain's supposed to go with the longest dimension for rigidity, for stability, for structural reasons, to keep it from splitting, checking, etc. So once you go over 3/4 inch, you need to switch to a bowl turned piece. And I've never had any plugs split, and I didn't realize why until recent years, when I talked to other plug makers who would say 2 inches, everything would be destroyed. And it's because they bought 2-inch spindle turning blanks and made stuff 1/2 inch thick, and that's what happens. It splits. So last tool that you're going to need is a moisture meter. If you are in a very dry area, you want to make sure your stuff's sitting in and dries for about a year, acclimates, and this will prevent anything from splitting on you in the long run. Now, the main reason I have one is I harvest all the wood myself. So this stuff, I'm hoping is under 10%. We got like a 9.6. In a dry, arid area, 9% is what you're looking at. And 9% on the side grain, and got about 10.7 on the end grain. So where I'm at, this is perfect. 11% moisture content is about average for Northeast America. You go jump up to around 14% when you're down in the Outer Banks, down to Florida. And as you go west towards Texas and Colorado, you want to be under 10%. So if this was for an order in Colorado, I would probably just rough turn it and let it sit for a couple days, get rid of some material, and go from there. Now this spindle blank is actually manufacturing scraps, so this should be, it doesn't even register, which means it's at like 5% or less. This is drier than anything. So I'll be turning at about, I'm on my second belt speed here, so probably 800 or 900 RPMs. Anything more, you can't sand on it. You'll burn the sandpaper, and you'll really burn the moisture out. It's not the jam I want to start with. That's my jam. Make sure you're in the center. It looks pretty centered. Let's see where we're at. 37.3, so I'll stop there. Stop and smell the cherries every once in a while. And with the chuck, you see me roll up my sleeves, definitely want to do that. Alright, so the next part we're going to do is we're going to clean up the chainsaw face here and get a nice flat edge. So we can mark our thickness of the plugs. Lloyd for cleaning this up. Nice and simple. There's still some chainsaw marks in it. We'll go over another 1/2 millimeter or so. I'm doing that slice to make sure I'm straight. You just kind of eyeball the tool, make sure the tool sits flat against it as you're digging into it. That's pretty flat. You got some tear up. You got some beautiful curl in there. Holy cow! Set the calipers to about 15 millimeters, 13, 14, 15. Now I actually use the back side of my calipers instead of this because it'll give me a flat line on the outside as opposed to a jagged line. I'll get a better reading. Then I take my smaller parting tool, it's a little more precise and easier to hold with one hand, and I put it on my tool rest, lean it up, and then, because leaning it allows me to pivot and get right to where that divot is, and then I'm pushing down on the tool rest and I just kind of spin this in place. And the head digs in, then you scoot over, do the next one. So I don't, you leave this little, it's a reference line so you can sand the plug down. And then you just unlock your calipers and just make sure that I'm at 15 there. Sometimes it's hard to measure it, 14.65. So because I'm a little lower there, what I'm gonna do is match my thickness, because it doesn't matter that I'm off a little bit, but it matters that they're not the same. Always take more off. 14.77, 14.7. So we're way tight there, way close. Don't forget to dance when your jams come on, putting that positive energy. So don't take your center split all the way down, nor the end one, because then you'll lose rigidity in the plug when you're carving it, and it could pop off on you. Or worse, start chattering and increase your sanding time. Now this next part is going to be the part that takes people, even myself, a little while to get comfortable and used to. If you can do them side by side, that's great, because you can line things up. You can even use your eyeball, and maybe from where the camera's at, you guys can look down at the bottom straight edges of the lathe, because this is locked in place, that can line the edge up with the edge down here. Just check things out. Just kind of straighten them out. It's all about your prep work. last fundamental check before we start carving. Aim to be right around 37, 36.65, and 36.45. So within a 1/4 millimeter there. We'll just we'll go to shaping them now. The key is to start from the outside and work in. Don't follow all the way through. You gotta do one side and then come back to the other way. Otherwise, you'll blow out the edges. So when you come back, you put it almost entirely upside down. And at like an 85, 80 degree angle somewhere in there. Really, really thin cuts. Be left with the near flawless surface. I fucked up on this edge here because I'm too close to my chuck. Would have done things a little differently. That's next time. It's been a while since I've done these. Let me see how good I am. So that's pretty shitty actually. You want to do that is you want the surface to be super smooth. Any pores will absorb oil more, make it real dry. So I measure the inside. We were looking for like 33 and a half. I'm at 34 and a half, and I'm at 34 and 34.3, 34.5. Just double check your outsides while you're at it too. Got 36.7. 36.7, 36.2, that can't be right. 36.3. So we're gonna bring the outsides on this one down just a little more. I mean, you're talking about a 0.5 millimeter, and we're not even done sanding them. If you don't take your time to mill the plug properly, you're going to spend a lot of time sanding it and misshaping it. .2, so they're all about 36.25 right now, and I usually sand about a 1/4 millimeter off, so it makes these 36, which is where I wanted them to be, and they look beautiful. Go ahead and sand these real quick. So if you go and you mill these things properly, you can dance for a little bit, because you're gonna spend less time sanding. In fact, if you ever take 80 grit to your plug, it's because you don't know how to mill it properly. So we're gonna start at like a 150, probably a 180 on this. Let's go scrap piece of wood. You can even write numbers on it. I have a sandpaper storage thing you'll see in some of my other videos that I use. I go up to 600, and then I go to my micro mesh pads, which are they're supposed to start at a 400, but it's a little used, so I always hit it with 6 and then backtrack down to the 4 with this and work my way up to it's essentially 8,000 grit. I'm going to lower the speed on my machine. Some people have variable speed. I would take it down as low as possible. You're going to change the overall shape of it less, which is good, and you'll burn your hand less as well. Mine's just a manual belt driven one, so it takes a little bit. But bam, done. So now go to the 220. I have there's some tear out here, which is where I thought I was gonna have it. The tear out shows up in like a lighter color in a sense, and when you go to oil it, you'll see it really absorb the oil. So two things you can do are run it at full speed on the lower grit or the heavier grit, or just come back with the same grit in a fresh area on the 220, and I'm moving the headstock with my left hand, and then just kind of focusing in that area and kind of blending it. So I'm not sanding a dip. And this is kind of similar to anybody who ever gets their hair cut. You get your hair wet and it usually stands up, or it kind of, for wood it raises the grain. So we might have sanded some stuff down and the water is going to bring it back up, and we'll be able to hit it real quick and get the fuzzies. And you want to do that before you send the stuff out to somebody where they get their plugs wet, and next thing you know it swells up and everything opens up. It may look perfect, but I can't tell you how many times where I think I did a pair spot on and then I just hit it with the water just to be sure, and I see some stuff raise. You want to wait for the stuff to dry before you start sanding it, or it'll gunk up your sandpaper real bad. And sandpaper is expensive, and you try to use as little as possible. So one way to do it is a high-powered light. I've got some heat from the lamp right here. You could also just run your finger on it, get a little friction heat build up. Nothing wrong with that. You're putting energy into the wood from yourself. What makes things unique as opposed to how people mass produce these. you just want to feel it. Feel it in the opposite direction. If your lathe has a reverse, I recommend running the reverse and sanding. Mine does not. Notice how I'm not going on top, but if I do this, my finger gets cut, it gets caught, it pushes into me. If I go from underneath, it pulls away. If I go from here, it does the same thing, it pulls up. But if I go like that, it's gonna hurt. So the lighter grits, the finer grits, you'll see the colors start changing on them, and they gunk up pretty quickly. So you shouldn't spend too long in one spot, and if you did it right, you shouldn't have to spend long on there at all. Well, these are probably good to go, man. I would definitely sell these to the store. I see a scratch in there. I'm a little OCD about it. I take pride in my work. Even if it's only a $50 pair of jewelry, treat it like a $5,000 guitar. I mean, no one's going to see this, but that's not the point. The person wearing it is going to feel it 24/7 or however long they keep their plugs in for the day. So it's very, very, very important that that almost is spot on perfect. The advantage of the sandpaper tray is you can just move it whenever you're done. Line your mesh pads up. And this is where I do a friction polish. Some people do like a wax finish. I don't believe in that. Finishing the flares with anything other than just oil. So to get the best feel for the oil, we have to go the smoothest texture at all. So it's already pretty smooth right now. We got the rough out, we got the raised grain. So we're gonna go back, and sometimes I skip this part. I'll just do this one. And these come in bigger sizes. And I end up cutting them down so I get more of them out of them. Because you fold them, they kind of fit in there real nice. I'll just show you for the sake of the camera. I know I'm not supposed to go from the top. I can go like that, and then like that. Kind of fit that whole concave in there. Piece on my right hand. If it doesn't feel comfortable, then you stop. There you go. And when you do the oil on the lathe, you just a little bit, and you're heating it up by just continuing to push on it, and that will make the oil thinner and really push it into the pores of the plug. Buff off the excess. Inspect your work. I forget I have tinted glasses on. Oh man, that is beautiful curl right there. If I ever seen some wood curl, that's the curl right there I'm looking for. Look at that. Alright. Now very carefully, we're going to part it. So I always dry spin stuff before, because if you have this hit the head, something's going to blow up. So always make sure you're clear. And we want to get pretty close because we're going to be separating that too. If you have a bandsaw, you can use the bandsaw, but I don't. And this is where the little guy comes in handy, because that thickness, you get a much cleaner book match. You use a thinner piece, a thinner parting tool. So we'll go ahead and down that end, you want to go as slow, as light as possible. yourself a favor and don't break it off. Break it off, you'll get some tear out, and then your close milling will all spend for nothing, you know, to sand all this stuff. I use a Japanese Dozuki saw. It does cross cut and a rip cut because of the way that the plugs are mounted. Kind of, it's cross cut for me. Always put a piece of wood underneath your thing, because the only thing that's going to bend these teeth is this metal bed. And it cuts on the pull stroke, so I will just pull. There you go. It's a little tiny nib. Forgot to mark your plug like I did, because I'm talking while I'm doing this. You can tell this is where the nib was. You can take that pencil I told you to grab and just kind of put a line, something denotes it. All it takes with these things. A couple swipes. So there you go. We've rough milled some plugs, and in the next episode I will show you how to sand them. A couple methods. We'll do the backs one way. Oof, that's so beautiful. Like, look at that one. Do the backs one way, and we'll do the fronts the other way, so I'm gonna make these concave. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Follow me on my social media for giveaways, for discounts on all my pre-made products. Most importantly, go right to my website, darksidewood.com, and learn more about me, my process, my materials, my life, I guess. Appreciate you guys.